Welcome to an on-the-road edition of the MMA Beat. It is Thursday, January 14th, 2016. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani in Boston, Massachusetts. Now, usually we don't do an MMA Beat when we're at an event, but this week has been filled with massive news surrounding the world of mixed martial arts. We thought we got to do a beat. And wouldn't you know it, I gathered up a few of my friends, and here we are doing, as I said, an on-the-road edition of the show. Can't wait to get into it, because there is a lot to discuss. You know this man. This is the man in the shirt, Jeff Wagenheim of SportsIllustrated.com and the Washington Post. Making her MMA Beat debut, Esther Lin, photojournalist from MMAfighting.com as well. And of course, that is the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall, also of MMAfighting.com. All right, guys, thank you very much for the time. Great to have you here. Let's talk, in my opinion, about what is the biggest news of the week that may have flown under the radar a little bit, and that's kind of crazy in some senses, but I understand why. I think the biggest news of the week is Nick Diaz, because when he was suspended for 5 years in September, it was outrageous. It was shocking. It was ludicrous. We were all very upset about it, and I think we did our part to keep it in the news cycle. Well, now that he has come to an agreement with Nevada, they gave him an 18-month suspension, so it's retroactive of January of last year. It will expire in August of this year. He also is fined $100,000. That's the official suspension. It's all said and done. What do you make of it? Are you okay with this? Are you happy with the way things ended up?
Good news, bad news, really. Nick Diaz didn't deserve any kind of a penalty. Nick Diaz shouldn't have been penalized at all right from the start. However, the reality is that he was facing a ridiculously long suspension with a ridiculously huge fine, and so he managed to, through various sorts of pressure, reduce that to the point where he could start earning money again come August, and that's a good story. Once August comes and Nick Diaz is slated to fight again, that's where the good part of the story comes about. But right now, it still leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, the guy shouldn't be paying $100,000. The guy shouldn't have to wait till August to fight again. It's kind of ridiculous, but I guess it's making the best of a bad situation.
So in the end, Esther, they said that, all right, we're not going to get you on the tests because he in fact passed both of his WADA tests, but they're getting him on the questionnaire that he didn't fill it out correctly. He never said that there was any marijuana in his system or he smoked marijuana. He just said no, essentially, to that question. Does the punishment fit the crime?
$100,000 seems like a very steep fine for not filling out your questionnaire properly. I don't think it does, and 5 years didn't fit, 18 months still doesn't fit. I mean, but at least he gets to make a living now, which I thought was ridiculous. And I don't know, it still seems like they're just skirting around the fact that they did the testing correctly and all these other problems. They're basically punishing him for revealing that they had made a bunch of mistakes.
And what about this idea also that he has to come out and almost apologize for using the Fifth Amendment and say that was the wrong approach? When, look, I'm the Canadian here, you guys are the Americans, explain this to me. Isn't that your right to use the Fifth Amendment?
100%. It was funny, actually, because even hearing Lewis Middlebrook, his attorney, and
Lucas,
I'm sorry, basically saying like, hey, I know what they're trying to do here, but it's still his right. I mean, this doesn't change the fact it's still his right to do this. It seemed like that was a big sticking point, didn't it? Like that they were like, I want you to put in writing that you did this wrongly, but it's still wrong. I mean, that's still wrong. So the whole thing is still strange to me. I feel like reaching a compromise was more just. Obviously, we get Nick Diaz at some point this year coming up, August hopefully, or whenever that's going to be, instead of 2020. Was when he would have had to be, which is just ludicrous. And I still think that the whole thing looks very badly on the Nevada Athletic Commission. I did a little piece on it afterwards. The more you think about it, the more you're just like, I can't believe that they basically shrugged off the whole thing in the end. Like, let's just move on. We pass it. Let's go.
Right.
It's a chance for a mea culpa or something. It's a chance to kind of address something. They just didn't do that. So the whole thing still, it's better. I feel good for Nick Diaz. I know he's excited about it. I know his team is excited about it. Fans are excited about it. But ultimately, I'm like, come on, guys.
And that to me was so interesting because it's like every time you think they've shown us everything, Nevada, they have this ability to outdo themselves, because here they have this opportunity to right this wrong and say, look, we went back to the drawing board, we sat down with this team, we realized that maybe, we gave them too stiff of a penalty. They come out and first they blow right through the Vanderlei Silva thing, so everyone's watching for that. They delay that another month, and then they come out and say, okay, this has been agreed to. They don't even tell us what the terms are. They can't even do that. And that felt a little disappointing. Maybe I shouldn't be disappointed at this point.
And
But
how long did it take for the Diaz hearing in the first place? Like 3 hours
Right.
worth of deliberation? It's kind of crazy to me. So I assumed, honestly, like we're going to be in the afternoon by the time this even is brought up, and there would be some kind of, I don't know, there's some expectation to it, and it just felt like what a weird shrug off in the end,
They continue to set the bar as low as, it's really, when you think about it, we talk about athletic commissions, and we always talk about Las Vegas as being the fight capital of the world, and then there's also a commission in California that we hear about a lot, and then a commission in New Jersey, but they always are kind of the 1A and 1B or something like that, but the Nevada Commission has always held up as, this is the fight capital of the world, this is where the big things happen. And it's the biggest clown show. I mean, we don't hear about this ridiculous stuff going on in Jersey or in California. I mean, I'm sure that they have their faults. I'm sure there are things they do that aren't perfect, but it's only in Nevada where we get this foolishness, and it's getting to the point where we can say that the resolution of the Diaz situation is a positive, because they've set the bar so low that anything short of absolute lunacy is considered a victory.
Absolutely, it is good news. He gets his career back, and that's good. So let's focus on the news, because we can complain about the misfortunes of Nevada all we want. It's not going to change, at least not in my opinion. So Nick Diaz is a free man. He's going to start fighting hopefully later on this year. You're Joe Silva. Who does Nick Diaz fight in his return?
Oh man.
Is there a fight that makes sense? Because I could almost see the fans would get behind him fighting for the belt.
Yeah.
Like him versus Robbie Lawler too.
I would like to see that, but it doesn't seem deserved. But at the
Yes.
same time, I almost don't care.
You don't care. Why? Is it because it's Nick Diaz? Because you know what you'll get out of him?
That seems like a rematch I would want to see.
Sure.
I watched the first fight last week, and I was just, I don't know. It's I guess a bit of nostalgia, for me. Like, it just seems like something that we could go back to and remember. Like, I don't know. I've lost my train of thought.
But what about Tyron Woodley? I mean, could you imagine a guy like Tyron Woodley? Could you imagine Carlos Condit, who got so, like, at this point, I feel like we've given Nick that shot, with George when he was coming off a loss. I wouldn't hate it, and I know many people would buy it, but at some point, does he have to win a fight to get that title
Carlos
shot?
Condit wasn't exactly the top-ranked
Fair
guy
enough.
when he got the fight. There's been
He
several.
was coming off a win, though, over Thiago Alves.
There are a lot of other circumstances where the person who is deserving of the title fight gets jumped over. Frankie Edgar. And then Frankie Edgar,
Yes.
and then Frankie Edgar. To cite three examples.
Right.
And this happens in the UFC. Not to a ridiculous amount, but it certainly happens enough that when oddball matchmaking happens, and I say oddball in the sense of if you're looking at it purely as in a meritocracy sake, Nick Diaz has not earned the right to get a title fight, but because he's been wronged, and because he's a big fan favorite, and because he also had a really exciting performance against Robbie Lawler at a different time in Robbie Lawler's career, it'd be fun to see. I don't think it's a deserved fight right off the bat, but if it happened, I'd still be excited to watch it.
Let me throw a name out there for you guys. You tell me what you think of this.
I have a feeling I know where you're going.
Matt Brown.
There, I knew it.
Imagine that fight.
I had a
Matt
feeling.
Brown and Diaz. That's
Such a
perfect.
one-trick pony. Everything is
perfect.
Yeah.
Come on, I wanted this fight for
It
years.
is a great
in the
fight.
same way that Mike Chiappetta, when we were talking about, wanted to see the title fight that just happened. This is just a fight I feel like would be like a barn burner. It's in my mind. It would make somewhat sense, I think, for those two guys to fight, and I feel like it just would be that good. So I would love to see him fight a guy like that. They could play back a lot of different scenarios. They could play back the Condit fight again with Diaz. That was a good fight. So I mean, I feel like it's a good problem to have, to be like, okay, now how do we infuse Nick Diaz back into this fold, because that division right now is so wacky. It's got so many scenarios, and I think there'd be a lot of guys who might be ranked above him would still take that fight, given the profile fight and it being sort of a bigger money fight. So they got a good problem there. But I would love to see Matt Brown fight Nick Diaz.
His last fight was at 185. An out of left field suggestion: if Michael Bisping beats Anderson Silva, I'd love to see Bisping versus Diaz, just for the the pre-fight talk, the stare downs and all that. I think that'd be a lot of fun, and he's got some time if he wins in February before Nick comes back. I think that would be interesting.
Going in a different direction.
Yeah, why not? He's going to beat that guy.
Going in a different direction instead of a slugfest like not Matt Brown would bring to the table, or a stand-up sort of strategic fight that like Bisping would. A guy like Demian Maia would be an interesting thing because Nick Diaz is a great jiu-jitsu black belt, and we don't get that many opportunities to see him shine that way, and it'll be fun. I mean, that would be, talk about testing yourself. I mean, in a way that Gunnar Nelson tried and failed, but it was still exciting to watch him try. I'd like to see a guy like Nick Diaz go in there and see what he could do against Maia.
Okay, let's move along to the other big news of this past Tuesday. Tuesday was a very busy day in the world of mixed martial arts. So first we got the Nick Diaz announcement, and that was all well and good. We were, for the most part, expecting that. And then we got UFC 197. It was officially announced. The UFC had been kind of keeping its cards close to its vest on this one. We didn't get the big announcement that we were expecting on Fox on Sunday. We just got it via press release. Somewhat of an underwhelming announcement, if you ask me, but the fight card, at least what we have thus far, is fantastic. It's Conor McGregor versus Rafael dos Anjos. Main event, lightweight title, Holly Holm, Miesha Tate, bantamweight title. That's the co-main. Let me ask you, Esther. Conor wins the belt and at featherweight, and then he moves up to 155. This is unprecedented, and he's keeping his belt at 145. Are you okay with this decision?
I'm absolutely okay with it. I was actually maybe one of the few people that was just yelling. I thought he should have both. I mean, the chance to have both, why not? I didn't think that there should be a rule against keeping a belt in two divisions. I think it makes it more exciting, and I also think that he's active enough to keep both divisions active. I don't really think that he'll be sitting on it and then you'll be waiting and waiting, because featherweight was already backed up for a long time anyway. So I don't see that being a problem, and I feel like it brings more attention to the lightweight division.
UFC 200 is 6 months away. Is it risky now that we know that Ronda Rousey is not fighting to put your second biggest draw in March? I mean, anything can happen in a fight. You may not be ready. That's his plan. He wants to fight, but is that a little too risky for the UFC?
I do feel like it's a little soon. I wasn't expecting to have such a big fight so soon in the year, because I was basically just waiting for summer to roll around. But I do think it's risky, but at the same time, I'm greedy, so I'll take it.
Yes.
It's usually risky, but at the same time, you think about sort of the way McGregor has accelerated to this spot. It's all been sort of risky and crazy, like the way he's been handled. Like even the Chad Mendes thing, he was kind of put out there as his kryptonite if it was ever going to happen. They thought it would not happen. Then he gets it on short notice. He doesn't even hesitate to take that fight. And I feel like the Aldo thing, he never was balking with this whole thing. Like he wanted that fight from the word go. So I feel like in his mind, he's walking through all these opponents, and it's just a sort of amazing thing. I wrote in a column that it's almost like he's moving at a pace that we don't normally try to follow in the fight game. I mean, it's everything he's doing. It's almost like you can't wrap your mind around it before he's already on to the next thing. And I feel like that's the same thing here with this fight coming up in March. Him with the chance to win 2 belts, and then possibly keep defending all the way through the year, both sides. I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling, but it's unbelievable that we have this guy who's capable of it now. And I feel like maybe that's where it's all novel, is we have this guy who really could. So you really listen to him when he says, I could fight 4 times in a year, I could defend the belts. You sort of believe him, you know what I mean? At this point, there's really no reason not to believe that he's going to carry through with what he says unless he gets hurt. So at first I was a little bit like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but as I sort of thought about it and the sort of mystique that he brings to it and everything else, I thought, what a great fight. When it was actually announced, it really set in. I was like, you know what, this is crazy. RDA just walked through with Donald Cerrone. Yeah. He just beat Pettis, and now here's McGregor coming up, and he's acting like he's going to blow through him. What a great fight.
But he has to keep up that pace. I mean, before it was kind of a self-motivating thing, but now there should be external pressure for McGregor to keep up the pace. If you want to maintain that featherweight belt and you want to fight for the lightweight belt, you need to be relatively active. You need to be very active. But to think about the possibilities that are laying out in front of us now. But in a couple months, McGregor might be the champion of 2 different divisions. Or he might be the featherweight champion who just got maybe smashed in a lightweight fight. Come summer, he could possibly either defend that featherweight belt, or he could be not a champion either place. He could be a champion in 2 places or neither in a matter of a few months. It's like the possibilities are so wide ranging with him, but it's really exciting because no matter how it plays out, it's still really it's a thrilling process.
I could see a scenario too where if he's able to go up and win the lightweight belt, he's able to beat RDA, where he will make one last cameo back the other direction to fight Frankie Edgar, and that might be it for featherweight. Because then, he's already proven that he could have both the belts. I can't imagine in the long term he's going to want to keep like yo-yoing back and forth between those two divisions. My guess is if he's able to accomplish it, the feat will already been done, and at some point he'll just cede the featherweight belt and stay as a lightweight, or vice versa. He'll go to one or the other.
And I feel like in this day and age, we've seen some champions win the belt and kind of sit on it for a little bit and then heal up some bumps and bruises. This is a guy who beats Aldo, and I know it wasn't a long fight, but he's like, put me right back in there. And oh, by the way, move me up a division. Fight this guy who's looked like a killer. I love the evolution of the fans' reaction towards Conor. At first it was like, well, who is this guy? Then he's overhyped in Boston. Yes, Jeff. Then he hasn't been proven. He's just a pilot. We haven't quite. Then he's getting cupcake fights like Dennis Seaver. Then he's in over his head against Chad Mendes. Then, okay, now it's all going to end against Jose. And now it almost feels like, damn, this guy's got balls. Like, I feel like we've kind of gone in this circle, or not even a full circle. It's like, whoa, let's give this guy some props.
But again, I think that this was not misperception. At least I don't think it was. I think that he was given very favorable matchups early on in his UFC career. And I think that, when he got a title shot off of a win over Dennis Seaver, that was a big jump. I mean, it's not unprecedented, but it was a big jump. He's had to go out there and prove it. I mean, I know that we've had this discussion back and forth about what he's said,
foresight,
and his the words, and it's true that you can listen to somebody talk about what they're going to do and gain a belief of it, but there's nothing like actually seeing it happen. And he has gone out there and done it. He's gone out there and backed up every single word he said, and beyond. And so I think that that's the bottom line. He is a guy who is the reason why he keeps going and going and going is because he just sees more horizons for him to surpass.
It's been an escalation too throughout the whole thing. Obviously, going from Chad Mendes, from Poirier to Seaver was a little bit weird, but then he went to Mendes, who was supposed to be Aldo, then Aldo, and now he's going up again. I feel like the escalation always leaves us doubt, like, oh, this is where he oversteps himself. This is where he gets in trouble. And so far he hasn't, but this becomes part of the drama. Like, how far can he take this thing? How far can he? Is he that good?
Right.
Is he that mystic? Can he beat these guys? And if he, you know what I'm saying? Like, can he call his shots the way he did? It's fairly epic. I just feel like it's something we have never seen in the fight game.
But I think it's different now. I do think it's really different now. I think when he was going up against, say, Mendes, and this was a huge step up in competition for him. I think it was reasonable to doubt what he was capable of. I think now, regardless of what actually happens when he steps in against Dos Anjos, he has proven himself. He proved himself against Mendes, a wrestler who really took him down and beat him up for the better part of a round, but he withstood that and he got up and he knocked the guy out. And then of course he completely discombobulated Jose Aldo in the lead up to that fight, leading to Aldo doing something which he never.
Working on RDA.
And now he's working on it again, but he's already proven himself. So even if you are somebody who thinks that RDA is going to beat him, it doesn't diminish McGregor in even one iota, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm curious to get your take on this, Esther, because you do a lot of work in the boxing world. You've been around that sport for a very long time, and I thought Conor did a very boxing thing this week. Almost at the exact same time that the UFC sent out their press release,
right,
officially announcing this, he sends out his own press release.
Right.
And he says McGregor Promotions is happy to announce, and yeah, there were some jabs at RDA, but what he is doing is very Floyd Mayweather-esque. And I know it's ironic to compare them today because they've been going back and forth a little bit, if you want to call it that. But it feels like he is almost, and not everyone can be Conor, not everyone has his power and his tongue and his drawing power and all that, but it feels like he is taking a page out of Mayweather's book here. He is trying to build his own little mini promotion within the promotion, and we come to find out that after the Brandao fight, he actually kind of started his own promotion very quietly.
Yeah.
What do you make of what he's doing behind the scenes?
I think it's great because most of the major boxers that anyone pays pay-per-view money for, they all have their own promotions, and it's a good step towards bringing more power towards the fighters. It's not just for Conor as well, like Conor's the most vocal about it, but this will help everyone else. The more he pushes back at the UFC and claims power for himself, the more other fighters can do it as well. So that's how I feel about it. I really think that it's a very positive thing, and it's definitely puts a lot more power in his corner, which puts more power in everyone else.
So there's this infamous little clip that surfaced after UFC 194 of Uncle Frank Fertitta slamming the belt, and we don't really know why. Dana White spoke to the Boston Herald, our friend Jack Encarnação, this past week, and he said that, Frank is, as he put it, just a moose of a man, and he was just sort of reacting, but it was not negative or positive. And so I'm wondering, what do you think? Let's put ourselves in their minds. We don't really truly know. We can't speak for them. But Conor McGregor going to 155 and being this two-weight world champion, as he calls himself, do you think the UFC is looking forward to that? Or are they secretly hoping that, okay, if he becomes a champion at 155, we're going to create this two-headed monster? I kind of feel like, if I'm looking at it from my perspective, they're almost cloning him and they're putting the biggest draw in two weight classes. That's a great scenario. But do you think that this is going to cause more problems for the UFC? And are they viewing it that way? You know what I mean?
They might be viewing it that way, but I actually think that I had heard from a couple other people that Frank throwing the belt was just his emotional reaction, and that it wasn't negative. I don't know, but
There's no doubt that there's a little bit.
There were people that were there
Yeah.
that said, like, a second later you can see him laughing and smiling, so it was definitely a positive reaction. But I would say that even though the UFC might look at it as a lot of other problems, I think it's good. You're right. He's cloned in two divisions. Now you have two divisions that people are interested in. RDA, for as dominant as he's been, just hasn't been getting the kind of attention that such a dominant champion should have.
Moose are volatile creatures, guys. I'm going to just throw that out there. I think that, I really believe when you talk to the matchmakers, and you can get them, they're never on record, but when you talk to them, that their thing is to beat the champion. That's what they want to do. So in this case, they've got a champion versus champion. I think that they're like, hey, we're maximizing sort of one man's wish to go up and do this. We're going to accommodate him to let him hold his belt. There's a major storyline there from the novelty aspect of it, from the historical aspect of that, all these things. And plus, he's a huge draw. I just think that, I think that in this particular case, I don't know if I would say rooting interest, but I would say that it's a win-win, like you were kind of mentioning. I just feel like they're putting him into a position by letting him keep his belt. They could always go back and defend that belt, and that's that. But at the same time, obviously, like this is one of those situations where, from a perspective of momentum and all the things within the Mystic Mac thing that we talk about, it could dent that pretty badly if he goes in there and gets crushed by a guy like RDA. You know what I mean? So you're not sure if it's damaging it to him ultimately to put himself in a position, because it damages this whole thing we're talking about with his promotions and everything else. He's basically one step. What he's doing is like power visualization. He's like one step ahead of everything. He's busting all those cliches about one thing at a time. Since he got there, he's been wanting the belt. He's been wanting this. He's been calling his shots the whole way, 10 steps ahead. So I feel like this is just par for the course. And so the UFC is sort of accommodating him. I feel like it all makes sense. It's all going into the same place.
Just play one second, because I want to use this word, because I can't use it with either of you guys. Play Mystic Mendenhall for me for a second. I can't do Mystic Wagenheim.
Can't do that.
Why not?
You can do Wiley Wags.
But it's not the same. It's not the same. Mystic Mendenhall just roll.
Mystic Mendenhall, I like that.
McGregor Promotions, does it always just remain this sort of thing, this jokey thing, or do you actually foresee a time that this becomes a real thing and he goes off on his own?
If you're judging where he's at right now and where he could go, yeah, I think it could be a thing, don't you? I mean, like, this is the type of, he's already generating, he's projecting himself as something, he's always been projecting himself as something much larger than he is in his previous station. Like, wherever he's at, he's already projecting himself to the next stage. He's projecting himself. So I'm like, sure, I think he could take it as far as he wants to, just because he's that guy. He's, it's almost psychopathic or some like, I don't know the exact word, but it's like that sort of visualization and intensity to get to what you want is almost what you see. And I feel like he clearly has a business sense. He clearly has a sense of how to get things done. He clearly has an understanding about how his mind can create these things, these opportunities for him. So yeah, I think he could I think he could make this into something.
And let's not forget, whether there's a press release with McGregor Enterprises there, or if Conor is fighting at 145 pounds, or if he walks into the cage at 155 pounds, in any of those scenarios, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the money that comes in to the UFC is just as green in every single one of those scenarios, and they love it. And as long as he's bringing in money, and he is bringing in a lot of it, as long as he continues to bring in a lot of money, even if he starts becoming a hard negotiator and wants a bigger piece of that pie, that's up for their negotiations to happen, but the pie gets bigger. The pie gets so much bigger that they're going to be happy. I think the fighters who the UFC will get upset at are the ones who try to take care of their own careers from a different perspective. Like John Jones, when John Jones declined the Chael Sonnen fight and 151 was canceled. While I think that John Jones did the right thing, I think that the thing that he should have done and he had the right to do, from the UFC's perspective, they didn't make any money because that fight was, and that whole event was canceled. So they, of course, would be upset at him. But nothing that Conor McGregor is doing is going to diminish their bottom line. Although, yeah, maybe he'll make a little bit less money. They'll make a little less money because he's demanding more, a bigger piece of the pie. But the pie is so huge, and the more that he keeps churning it out, and the quicker he keeps churning it out, if he's fighting in 2 weight classes and he's fighting more often, the money is just going to be pouring in.
Right after the announcement that Holly Holm would be fighting Miesha Tate, Dana White spoke to Yahoo Sports and said that Ronda Rousey is not going to fight at UFC 200 anymore. It's going to be later on this year. I had heard it's more in the November timeframe, and that kind of, I saw some people saying, "Oh, you're rolling the dice with this fight in March if you want her to fight again at 200." But now that we know that Ronda's not fighting there, so that's another blow, in my opinion, to that card. Dana White said a couple of weeks ago, we should have our promotional license taken away if we don't book this rematch right away. They're not doing that, but Ronda had something to do that. Are you surprised to hear that she actually needs more time, or do you think ultimately this is the right thing for her?
This is the right thing for her. I'm not surprised to hear it. I guess I was surprised. Well, no, it made sense that they would release that news Tuesday along with all the other news, so it wouldn't be quite as much of a shock, or people wouldn't hang on it as much.
Yep.
But I do think she needs more time. She's has all these movies that she had signed on to do. She's got to get them done first. Contractually, she has to finish them, right? And then also I feel like she's going to need more time to make adjustments. She might look at that fight and see that she was just caught, but she wasn't, and she needs time to make all those adjustments, and it'll be good for her.
I also am a little concerned, if I may. Historically, when fighters go and do the movie thing and then come back and do I think of the most famous one, in my opinion, is Lennox Lewis. When he fought Hasim Rahman, he had just filmed Ocean's 12. He goes to South Africa, I believe it was, gets knocked out. And that, to me, like, every time a fighter goes and does the movie thing and comes back, and now, so her time off is not necessarily in the gym or regroup. She's doing movies. Like, I wonder, is that the best way to regroup? You know what I mean?
Maybe for her, because it seems like she really enjoys that life. It seems like, what did she, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago she had put out an Instagram post, and it seemed like she missed being a celebrity,
Which one was it?
The one from the quote from 12th Night.
Okay, yes. Do you recall the quote for those that missed it? Can you?
It was something like, once I was adored as well.
Yes, Shakespeare.
Right.
That's right.
Out of context, but it's okay. I think that she does miss that life, and it makes her happy, And anything that makes her happy might be actually good for her, because she did seem pretty burnt out by all the press she had to do leading up to 193. So
it becomes like what is Ouroboros, it's insane, because she's only doing movies because she was so sublime in the cage and what she was able to do, and it's one of those things you're like, well, now she's sort of enjoying the fruits of her labor. That she's good, she gets to do all these movies and things, but then you see how her outro from the game at that point is so singular in your mind because of the way she lost, and she really didn't seem like she had a lot for Holly Holm. I didn't see, watched it a couple times, you just don't see a lot of positives to take from it. So I feel like, from my perspective, from a fight game perspective, you have to think like she's going to have to make some adjustments. I feel like that's part of the reason maybe that she is backing up. So she's carving out the time still to put in that work. At least I would hope, because I feel like she needs to. Ronda Rousey has been able to do what she does to everybody she's faced so far. She has not had to adjust beyond. I know some people are talking to fighters and stuff, they're like, I've never seen her throw a kick. You don't see her throw kicks. You don't see her do these things. I feel like now she's going to have to actually think in terms of technical superiority over Holly Holm. How are you going to be? What can you exploit? She's going to have to be thinking about the game more with her coaching staff and everything else. There's a lot of things that have to go there. So I was not surprised at all that she's not going to fight on UFC 200. In fact, I thought it was a smart move for her, not just for the movies, but just from a competitive standpoint, to regain the thing in her that she wants to compete and get to that level, but also to figure out, if it's Holly Holm who's still there at the end, how you're going to compete, what things you're going to do different in that fight.
Yeah, and her schedule was set in a way that it made sense at the time it was created, because she was able to bounce back and forth from films and other non-fighting obligations, and then go out there and win fights in 16 seconds and 14 seconds and 34 seconds, and just dominate and be untouchable. So of course, you schedule all your things and then you set yourself up for a short camp, go out there and dominate another opponent and move on. Well, everything changes. Once you go into the cage and you get beat up, now everything has to change. Not just your strategy for how you're going to approach a fight, but also your strategy for how you're going to approach all your extracurricular things, because now you have to allow more time, you have to allow a different kind of focus. I mean, I think that she really, I get the feeling that some of her, some of what defeated her in that Holly Holm fight was, of course, her inability to deal with a better striker. But I think some of it was just a mental lapse of thinking that she was just indestructible, and now she has to go at things in a different way and build herself back up.
She had been the most aggressive, like confident with aggression in the cage probably of anybody going. Like she would just go in there and immediately try to take you out. That's what she did. And it's worked. It's worked for her to this point, and I just feel like that's such a mental hurdle to be like, I can't really do that to Holly Holm. So how do I beat her? That's going to take some time to figure out, because obviously, like you all saw the fight. I just feel like there was nothing that you saw from her aggression, the way she fights, that was going to work in that fight.
Well, she never had to implement a plan B.
Yeah.
You know, Holly, when in the post-fight interview, when you were asking her about what, someone asked her, why didn't you try to take you down? And she was like, no, she did. Holly was like, in my mind, I had all these plans. If this didn't work, I was going to go to my plan B, and if Ronda changed her mind, I would go to plan C. Holly had all these plans, but Ronda had one plan. And so once it failed, she kept going for that one plan anyway. And she's got to get to the point where she has something else.
Yeah. I will say this one last thing on that, just real quick. If she fights in November, obviously that's a full year from her fight, and that's still 8 months though removed from this Tate Holm fight, and you almost wonder then, will there have to be another fight in between there?
Holly wants to be active.
Exactly right. Yeah. So if Holly's the winner and she's able to come out unscathed, who knows? I mean, she may defend it again before we see Holly.
I know they want it. I know they would love to see Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey in the cage again because, well, for obvious reasons. But I would be curious just to see how Ronda Rousey performs against another fighter, because if she goes in there and has a bad showing against Holly Holm again, we could just say, well, Holly showed her the first time that she's a superior fighter. But if she goes in there against somebody else, she's never had a moment of problems with anybody else. It was just that one. So we'll get a sense of what she's, what's going on in her head. It's sort of like, Tyson post Buster Douglas. Yeah. There was, he never had a plan B. Mike Tyson never had a plan B because plan A always worked. He went out there, unleashed on his opponent, and the opponent went down, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, he needed a plan B, and there was none. And it wasn't just that Buster Douglas, was better that night. What happened in the aftermath of that? Mike Tyson was really never the same. He was never the same fighter. There was other people realized.
Well, I hope the UFC is filming her on March 5th, because it's going to be fascinating I would love to watch her reaction to seeing two other women fight for what was once her belt, and one of those women being her arch nemesis, Miesha Tate. Perhaps just what the doctor ordered for Ronda Rousey is that Miesha wins the belt, because she has that confidence that she beat her twice, and that could be the fight that she returns
she's
to.
Like, UFC 200, yeah, I could fit that.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting times in the middleweight division as well this week. Chris Weidman was on the MMA Hour Monday, his first interview, saying that the loss to Luke Rockhold was essentially a godsend. He's happy that it happened to him. Somewhat of a surprising stance, but then at the end he said, make no mistake about it, I want the rematch. And when you hear that on Monday, you're kind of like, all right, well, Romero kind of deserves it. But then Tuesday night we get the news that it appears as though Yoel Romero has failed an out-of-competition test that was given to him by USADA following his fight against Jacare Souza. Now, we should say, in this sport and in sports in general, it feels like you're almost guilty until proven innocent. He has 2 weeks, now a little less, to appeal this news or this result. So we should give him that benefit of the doubt. But right now they have put out that he may have violated their anti-doping policy, and if that is the case, he'll be suspended for 2 years, and that may be the end of Yoel Romero's career. This is a guy who's approaching 40 years old. He's been through a lot. Who knows if we ever see him again? So knowing that, what do you do with Luke Rockhold? Because it seems like he doesn't have, an obvious answer for his first title defense.
Well, the thing about Romero, though, they gave him 2 weeks, but his corner is going to have the stool. They spill water, and so he's actually going to get like an extra week because by the time they get the stool out of the corner,
you've been waiting for that.
Well, there is no obvious one, really. You think about it. Okay, if Romero comes through and didn't fail a test, then he gets it. But if he doesn't, what are you going to do? Weidman, I don't feel like that fight was. I feel like Chris got beat up badly enough that I would not want to.
You don't want to see the immediate rematch. I wouldn't want to see the
rematch immediately. I don't feel like it's warranted. But it's kind of thing where maybe you end up backing into it because I don't know who else is there. I mean, I've heard people talk about Jacare Souza. Well, he lost to Romero. I mean, right. I know there's controversial, but he lost the fight, and it certainly wasn't a great performance. I didn't think that Romero's performance was that amazing. So, but he won the fight, so that's why he deserved the fight in the first place. So, it's kind of and certainly. I know that Rockhold has been talking about Vitor Belfort, but that makes everybody's skin crawl when that is even mentioned.
He might have been the one who won the lotto last night with this news.
That's true.
What I mean? He might get that.
I hope so.
Well, that would be a little bit ironic if he gets this shot after one guy may have failed a drug test, if you know what I mean. So what's your final answer? You're not going to give me one?
Pass it to Esther.
You don't have a final answer.
I don't have an answer.
Why does the middleweight you remember last week on this show, he was kind of stumped? Why are you always stumped with the middleweight title picture? Okay, perfect.
No, I just don't feel like this.
I could see Jacare because I thought that he had.
Is that what you want, or is that what you think is going to happen?
That's what I wanted.
Now we should also preface that you have a soft spot.
I do have a soft spot for everybody in Strikeforce, but I will say that I will watch the Weidman rematch because I feel like for Luke and even also for Chris Weidman when he beat Anderson Silva, he had to do it twice, and I think Luke feels like he's going to have to do it twice to prove to everybody that he is great and that he deserves to be at this spot. So maybe he might have to do it again. Just people might doubt him for one reason or another. But there isn't really that many other people at middleweight. Is there?
I was going to say that the one that I would wait for,
I
would wait for Michael Bisping and Anderson Silva to do their fight. Because at that point, you have Michael Bisping, who's been forever stranded without a title shot. And if he's able to get by Anderson Silva, what greater springboard to the title shot? And then you have Anderson Silva, if he wins, the old champion, who's not Chris Weidman now, then you got a very intriguing fight between those two guys. You could make the case that one of those two, whoever wins that fight, if they did it emphatically enough, might be the guy.
And you kind of wonder if he's not going to get Vitor, if Luke, who will be in London, by the way, to watch that fight in person, if he's kind of hoping for that, because a rematch against Bisping can sell. They have a heated rivalry. Bisping will sell the fact that he was headbutted and he didn't deserve to lose, and then Anderson is Anderson. That might be his best option from a promotional standpoint, a money standpoint, but I have a feeling that they might book this one before that fight ever happens.
I would love to see them wait as well, just because this is a title fight, and I've said this a million times on the show, I have a much different standard for title fights than for any other fights that you could just book the most fun, logical, or lucrative fight. But this is something different. Like I wouldn't go for Jacare just because not only did he lose his last fight, but he also lost to Rockhold. Right, so it's not like it's not like the champion is getting to maybe avenge a loss like he wants to avenge against Belfort. So that would be, I wouldn't go for that one. I think that if it were Anderson Silva, that'd be a lot of fun. And Michael Bisping, even though he lost to Rockhold, he would be coming off a victory over Anderson Silva. So you got to sort of. That's why there really isn't an answer right now, but I feel like that would be the one that would create an answer.
So late Tuesday night, I'm telling you, Tuesday was a crazy day for MMA. BJ Penn puts out a picture on Instagram of him and Greg Jackson in what appears to be Greg Jackson's office in Albuquerque. BJ went there, had been thinking about it for quite some time. They had a great meeting, and he's going to be staying in Albuquerque for a little bit. Greg Jackson telling me that he's very optimistic about BJ's fighting future. And I got to say, if anyone can help turn around a career, I mean, his work speaks for himself. It's Greg Jackson and Mike Winkeljohn and those guys there. They did it with Andrei Arlovsky, they did it with Alistair Overeem and many others as well. And then on Wednesday, we get the official call out, the formal challenge to his nemesis Nik Lentz, asking him to fight and meet him at UFC 197 on March 5th. And then via you, Chuck, Nik Lentz just
created a monster.
800 bombs on BJ Penn with plenty stipulations, just all kinds of stuff going on there. There's a lot to unpack here, but Chuck, let me ask you. BJ Penn going to Jackson's, March 5th or not, just trying to revive his career. How do you feel about this?
Well, if you were going to say he's coming back, what would be the ideal situation for him to be in? I would say going to Greg Jackson's and maybe seeing what they can do, because we've seen him dust off ornaments in the past, like these relics who've kind of come in. I don't want to demean him that way, but what I'm saying, guys who might have seemed a little washed up, like Arlovsky sort of reinvented himself over there. I feel like he would be the guy. You know, if that's a compelling team right there.
Yep.
And for him to be a part of that and to see what he kind of, you know, what things they can pick out for him to be doing differently and to get him prepared and everything, those guys, the way they work and everything, that becomes very intriguing. That's a huge storyline for a guy who's not really that old. It just hasn't looked very good in his last fights. He looked horrible in his last fight against Frankie Edgar. So I feel like we all collectively think, ooh, that was a rough one, a rough way for you to go out, but adios, man, don't do it anymore. If you're going to bring him back, this would be the way to do it, though. I just feel like Jackson Winklejohn, they have a way of sort of understanding you as a fighter and what you should be doing, you know what I mean, and getting you there. So I'm compelled on that level alone. If he's going to do it, this is the way to do it.
How do you feel, Esther?
Plus, how much of his loss to Frankie was Frankie's dominance and Frankie's
Sure.
skill? A lot of times we kind of forget how good Frankie Edgar is, and maybe we
always discount Frankie.
Yeah.
right, and so maybe we're not thinking about, everyone just like rushed to say, oh, BJ Penn has to be done, without looking at Frankie Edgar going, oh my God, how great is Frankie Edgar?
Yeah.
But he didn't seem like himself, right? In that fight, I mean, he
Right.
was kind of standing on his tippy toes. I'm just worried, is he doing this for the right reasons? Is he doing this because he wants to fight Nik Lentz and it's just about a beef, or is it, you know, does he need the money? Is he in a bad spot? I don't know. I'm wondering about the motivations. But again, I feel like, and maybe I'm putting too much stock in Greg, and I know you know him well as well, I feel like Greg wouldn't allow him to get back in there, wouldn't sign off on this, wouldn't put his name if he doesn't feel like BJ still has it in him. Because remember, when Andre went there, we all thought he was done. When he was getting knocked out by Kharitonov, we thought this is a shot fighter with a glass jaw, and look what's happened to him. So I feel better about the whole situation. You know what I mean?
I do feel better about it because I think that the other thing, Greg really likes to consider themselves as a cohesive team. You don't want to bring somebody in that doesn't really want it or wants it for the wrong reasons. And so I know he thought about it a lot before being able to let BJ come over, because you don't want to just bring someone in who has the wrong motivation.
Yeah.
And if he needs the money or something, he's not thinking about it straight, then he might not execute the plan that you put forth for him.
I think also Esther makes a really good point of that. Let's not discount the Frankie Edgar factor.
Sure.
It's a big difference between Frankie Edgar and Nik Lentz.
How dare you?
No disrespect meant to.
How dare you?
I know his manager sitting right down at the end here, but I mean, and I love that Nik Lentz. By the way, I mean, I got to say that
Let's talk about Mr. Lentz.
I love the way he's
coming out of his shell.
coming out and
As a
promoting
wordsmith,
himself. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Because,
You're
you know,
okay with this, because sometimes you don't like this sort of thing.
Well, I don't like it when that's sort of all there is. I like it when this is a guy who's he's not a highly ranked guy, and here's an opportunity to get in there with a legend of the sport. So, you know, rather than just say, well, you know, gee, Mr. Penn, you'll be really an honor to get in there. No, you go at the guy, and I think it's a beautiful thing. Not only that, but anybody who can evoke Jermaine Jackson,
yes,
Mahalia Jackson, and Jackson Pollock in one sentence. I mean,
Nik Lentz, who knew?
There's nobody else in MMA who's capable of that.
Should have saw this coming. But he broke out a little bit of this with the slow your stroll, Sonny Boy. He was talking to somebody early on. I was like, where did this all come? Where did this Nik Lentz come from? It's just like
Remember, he was once a nondescript fighter, and then he shows up, I think it was in Sacramento prior to his fight against Chad Mendes, wearing the bow tie and everything. We were like, what is going on here? Slowly but surely he's come out of his shell. So, okay.
It's like any carny.
That is
any good carny.
So I think that he's the right level of matchup for BJ to come out, if he's going to come out.
Right. You okay?
And also it's the right, this is a guy who's a grappler, and BJ Penn is a sublime grappler. So we might get to see him tested in a different way. Instead of getting clocked in the chin by somebody, he might be on the mat with somebody.
If you're going to come out of it too, it's like, you know, Nik Lentz is not one of these.
You don't have to fight a
You don't have to fight a guy like that. So
Right.
it's like if you're welcoming BJ Penn, it sort of makes sense, I think, from a matchmaking standpoint. He sort of understands that. I think, like, calling out this guy who they have a beef, so there's a little bit of a markability in play already. So it's like, I like it. You know what I mean? I like that they're going back and forth too.
Esther, how do you feel about March 5th? I feel like that's a little soon. That's less than 2 months.
Yeah, that is really fast.
It didn't seem like Nick was in favor of this, and he seems to be the one calling the shots, at least in his own mind. But I feel like I'd like to see BJ stay at Greg's and Wink's a little longer than just less than 2 months, right? He just got there.
Yeah, you just got there. Was that the first day that he was there
Yeah,
when he posted
Tuesday,
the photo? I mean, that seems really soon. But maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's the kind of person that would wear it down in a long camp. I don't know.
Yeah.
So maybe he needs to, You know?
Well, I know he's coming out of his comfort zone, leaving Hawaii, he's in Albuquerque, so he doesn't want to like stay there for a year. But I'm surprised when he threw out March 5th.
And let's face facts. The other side of it, if Nik Lentz may be talking I've just praised him for his talking, but if he's not going to stick to his guns about when,
sure, this
when
is a
and
big
where it's
deal
going to happen.
for Nik Lentz,
If this fight were to be offered to, if Joe Silva contacted him and said, "Hey, we're going to do this fight tomorrow. Come to Boston," he'd be on the next plane into town.
Special guest referee Mike Dolce. How about that? The other interesting thing that happened around the same time as this has been a wacky week, I got to say. So Tuesday was all that other stuff.
You have to preface it each time.
I know, because I keep unpacking. That's why I really felt like I needed to do this show here today, just to kind of make sense of it all. And thank you guys for helping me do that. So Dana White goes on off the record with Michael Landsberg and says, "All right, this is the plan for CM Punk's first opponent. This young kid, Mickey Gall, who we were introduced to on the first episode, the first official episode of his new show, Looking for a Fight. He's 1-0 now officially. He's going to fight this young man from Houston named Mike Jackson, who, as I came to figure out later on, is a guy that I've seen at plenty of these media events in the Houston area, Strikeforce UFC. He's got one of those twisty Ian McCall-like mustaches, and I had no idea that he's an amateur fighter, kickboxer, not much of an MMA career, but I've definitely seen this guy as a media member, and that he's going to be fighting Mickey Gall on the Fight Pass prelims at UFC 196. That's this coming February, first week of February, Super Bowl weekend in Las Vegas, and if Mickey Gall can beat Mike Jackson, then he's going to fight CM Punk later on this year. They didn't exactly say if Jackson beats Gall if he gets the shot, but I guess the stipulation is thrown out there. And this, of course, brought out a lot of reactions online. And to me, what's most interesting about it isn't so much the plan. It's people still sticking to this idea, like, oh, CM Punk, like we're still talking about the CM Punk, whether or not he warrants the shot in the UFC. We're still talking about him getting the shot over a guy like Ben Askren. We're still sticking to this narrative that we've been talking about for the last 13 months. The story is 13 months old. It's not about CM Punk anymore. It's now about who's the guy that's going to get the lottery ticket, in my opinion. But fans are still holding on to that, and they have every right to. Forget that for a second. I just felt like I had to get that out. How do you feel about this? Because to me, when Strikeforce had Herschel Walker, they just threw in a guy out of nowhere. His name was Greg Nudge. No one knew anything about him. He was a face. And if he won, what do they do with him? At least it feels like the UFC is actually thinking like, wow, we need to build something here. And they're doing a good job from looking for a fight to this prelim fight to then the future of actually building something for Punk.
They're promoting from so many different angles because they've got the whole, they got where did Gall come from? He came from that Dana White.
I like it. There's synergy.
And so they're saying that there's, the whole purpose of the Ultimate Fighter always was to bring in fighters who could, back then I think they were thinking fighters who could contend for championships, but that's not always what you need. Every fight card has 12 or 13 fights, and you always need to have people at the bottom of the card. So you're going to get guys, and maybe Mickey Gall 4 years from now, is we're sitting here talking about this guy, contending for a championship, or maybe we've never even heard of the guy. Maybe he goes in there and CM Punk takes him out, or maybe he beats CM Punk, ends that thing, and then he never, he goes out and just can't fight one of the so-called legitimate, the legitimate UFC fighters. Who knows? But it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that they're thinking about grabbing a little bit from this column and grabbing a little bit from that column. We've got this little show on Fight Pass. Oh, by the way, it's $10 a month. And they can promote that, and then they've got CM Punk who can draw some pay-per-view numbers, and that's more money in the bank. They're finding ways beyond the big, Conor McGregor versus RDA fights and all the stuff that's at the top of the card, but they're finding ways at the bottom of a card. Not to say that they're going to put CM Punk at the bottom of a card, but in terms of the pecking order of fighters, the lower level guys, they're finding ways to still monetize that and just do it in a creative way.
How do you feel about it?
I think it makes more sense to have him fight also Mickey Gall fight first, because then you get, as you said, it's like a sweepstakes, right?
Yeah.
You get to follow him along, and then also then if he beats CM Punk, now we have a storyline for him.
Sure.
He's not just some guy that they brought in. And then the other...
You also get UFC footage, right?
Yes.
You also get some highlights
UFC
of
footage,
him.
you have something to put into packages, you have photos of him, you have all this background on him, and it makes more sense, and it's not just Greg Nudge. And then, then you're not taking that risk.
I know you bring photos into this. Photos are that's
good. You come at it from a different perspective, and that's true. That's important.
Having assets is really important ahead of time. Like every once in a while when UFC signs somebody new and say they came from Invicta or whatever, I'll get a call and they'll be like, do you have any photos of this person? We don't have any images of this person. It's hard to sell a fight when you don't know anything about them.
Yeah, you have some grainy footage from a local show on the East Coast. This makes them feel a lot more legitimate. I also like the fact that it's another way for them to push Fight Pass. Now you have this kind of this fight, and I know that they're not UFC caliber, but we have to, in my opinion, get off of this idea that the UFC is the Super Bowl of MMA. Those days, that's 2007, 2008. Now guys are fighting in the UFC. When Floyd Mayweather fights, there are guys fighting on the undercard who are nowhere near his level. That doesn't delegitimize Floyd Mayweather as a fighter. So Mickey Gall fighting on the Fight Pass prelims, in my opinion, doesn't make Fabricio Verdum a lesser champion. And I think people need to start figuring that out. It's not 2007 anymore.
You guys have all been in the game long enough where you've heard fighters say, you've written this or this. Have you ever stepped in the cage? Would you ever step in the cage? What would you do in the cage? Mike Jackson, this is for all of us. This is for all of us journalists.
I heard you got the call first.
So you like this?
I did get the call first, but I can't get down that way.
That'd be nice. Well,
No,
I think
that's all
you have to say.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I like that they're being a little creative, and I think most people were expecting them to just throw in a tough cast-off. Punk will be there. Hey, whether you like the Punk story or not, it's going to go away soon. I can assure you of that. At least they're trying to build something here, and I think it's going to
And you can't.
pay
What are
huge
you going to do?
dividends.
Put CM Punk against a guy who's like been in there 10 times? I mean, you can't do that. We talked about this on previous shows. I mean, you have to.
And by the way, I don't know if you've seen Gull's interviews, but the guy's got some charisma.
100%.
He's talking smack. He's putting out pictures on his Instagram.
If only Punk was a middleweight, that would solve our whole Luke Rockhold issue.
That's right. That's a good point. All right, let's end on this one. And by the way, if you're wondering at home why we're not talking about Dillashaw versus Cruz, that preview show is going to come tomorrow. So we want to, we're going to be taping it tomorrow. We want to leave you wanting a little more. So we'll save that talk for our preview show, but I want to end on this final story of this past week. It has emerged over the last few days. We have come to find out that the UFC has fined several fighters for not adhering to the Reebok policy, if you will. Now, it's important to note that Reebok is not the one doing the fining. It's the UFC doing the fining. They're the judge and jury here, and a lot of people have been falsely criticizing Reebok for coming out there and finding these fighters, in particular Nate Diaz, who wore jeans at the UFC on Fox weigh-ins in Orlando. So he claims, yes. Weigh-ins in Orlando. Rafael dos Anjos was wearing an Evolve MMA shirt also at the weigh-ins, and Donald Cerrone put a flag on his shorts during the fight. And it appears also that he received the biggest fine of them all, and perhaps that's because it happened fight night. Now, by the way, interesting to note, Matt Mitrione showed up to the media day here today without wearing any shoes because he was, as he put it, he was wearing Air Jordans, and they told him he couldn't wear Air Jordans here. So they are strictly enforcing this thing.
If he gets athlete's foot, who's going to pay that bill?
Yes, he was barefoot here. It was quite the sight.
Disturbing.
How do we feel about this?
Look, the UFC, if you're talking, you mentioned the sort of the fine print of the fact that Reebok is the one levying the fines. If you're talking the fine print and the legal mumbo jumbo of it, UFC seems to be within its rights to do this because the fighters have signed contracts. Part of that also, Reebok did negotiate an exclusive contract. So even though Reebok is not levying the fines, it comes back to Reebok because if this was not an exclusive fine, or if Reebok was okay with other companies being on the apparel, then things would be different. That's all the technical side of it. But really, you're going to fine Nate Diaz for wearing blue jeans. This is what he does. This is how he shows up to he's always done this. He shows up to fights wearing blue jeans. It's, and even more so, Donald Cerrone, from now, I may not have this right, but my understanding was that flag is a tribute to his grandmother, or there's some family connection to the thing he wears. So now the UFC is going to take money out of his pocket because he's paying tribute to a loved one. And I know this is not unprecedented. The NFL has done this on many occasions when sometimes some of the football players will wear like eye black with a little message in there, and they'll just say, because those guys get paid enough, they'll say, well, I'll just eat the fine because I really want to pay tribute to my loved one, and they'll get the fine, they'll pay it, and they'll be happy because these guys make a lot of money. UFC fighters don't necessarily make that kind of coin, so it's a little harsher, and I just think it's a bad PR move.
How do you feel about it, Esther?
I think it's a bad PR move, especially because I don't think that the piece that was on his shorts covered anything. It didn't cover any logos
Yeah.
or anything like that. And it's a bit of individuality that he's always done. It's on his shorts always. So I feel like you doing that, and now all the fans are starting, now you look at all the comments and the fans are starting to tip the other way. You know, they're really, half the comments are yelling at Dana, half the comments are yelling at Reebok. I mean, people are angry because now it's your fan favorites that are getting fined. And you can still see the Reebok logo over the jeans that Nate was wearing. He didn't cover any of that. That's still visible.
And where does it stop? I mean, I'm looking over, you have nice tattoos on your arm. Like, a lot of fighters wear tats into the cage, and those have different symbols. I don't think that anybody's tattooing, brand names on their body, but there certainly are symbols that are, paying tribute to various things in their lives that are important. Those are not Reebok.
It just seemed like they were like, we're going to make an example of this class here, because you had all these different examples, like you mentioned, that we're going to find these people. This will set the precedent, essentially, so other people do not violate this, or they'll know. Nice. What's that? Some warning would be nice. I mean, I don't really dig the way they handled it at all. I mean, I just think that, but I think that that's sort of what they were thinking. Like, let's get them all. This will send the message, like, hey guys, let's not screw around with this. I listened to Donald Cerrone on your show on Monday, and I'm with him a little bit because, Conor McGregor gets the green trunks, and I'm like, why can't they just, if you're in a main event or a title fight, why can't you just design your own trunks? Like have the Reebok design the trunks the way you want them. I mean, if you're in that big of a fight, why can't you make that decision? So if he wanted something to do with the American flag, he just have him incorporate it at least, just so he can carry the symbol. It seems crazy to me that it was an American flag, a piece of American flag, regardless if it was for his grandmother or if it was tribute to the country. And I know what he was saying, like, hey, put the fine towards, to a charity, a Wounded Warriors Foundation or something like that, which I don't know how that's going to shake out, but that's a good idea. But still, it's a smart move, of course, because you're almost putting a conscience behind it all, and you're swinging the moral tables there and saying, hey, then you guys do this, which is smart. But I just think, like, in his position, it's a little ridiculous. He's fighting for a title fight. There was nothing. It's not like he's advertising. It's not like America's paying him to have that on there. It's just a tribute, the way he shows it. And you're like, well, how can they work together to make that work? I feel like that's maybe what they want to talk about going forward.
And I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think that some fighters are individuals. They always have been in this sport and in boxing. And
what we enjoy about these sports.
Sure.
Right, exactly. That's part. It's not just that they are, but you're right. This is the essence of it. And at some point, somebody's going to be belligerent about it, and is going to write something, is going to wear something into the cage that is going to be, offensive to Reebok or offensive to the UFC, and it's going to be targeted purposely for that. And it's just so I don't think this is going to end well.
And what I'll say is, I don't want this to get petty, and it feels like we're trending that way. In the NBA, it's become a thing, post-game press conferences. What are they wearing? Michael Westbrook, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, like that has become a thing. It's almost become like a show within a show. And they're not, Adidas has the NBA uniform deal. They have to wear that during the games, but to make Matt Mitrione take off his shoes, to me it feels petty. He's here to do media. Let him wear his shoes. We're not going to photograph his shoes anyways. Maybe he'll be standing up. But you got to at least have some grace period as well, where even with the USADA deal, they gave him a few months to kind of figure it out. If you were doing anything, get off it. Give the guys, this is a whole new ball game for a lot of these guys who aren't used to any of this. This is not what they're accustomed to. Give them a grace period to figure it out and grow accustomed to having
Cerrone was warned backstage, according to him, at least on some level, but I feel like, did Diaz even get warned about the jeans? I'm not even sure I would know.
Tough.
You know what I mean?
It's a tough time, but hopefully it doesn't trend too far into the petty category, or territory, I should say, because then it's not going to be a good look for both parties. All right, that does it for us. Thank you so much, guys. You killed it, Esther. Great debut. Hope you enjoyed it. A lot of fun to hear your perspective, and we'll have her on very soon as well. And hope you enjoyed our on-the-road edition of the MMA Beat. So much happened this week. Like I said, we just had to do it, and it was a lot of fun. Again, thank you very much for Jeff, Esther, Chuck. I'm Ariel. Appreciate you watching, and stay tuned all week long. We'll have plenty more from Boston here for UFC Fight Night, Dillashaw versus Cruz. Thanks again.